And God, we just pause and just invite you to ask that you just make your presence known to us as we think and we do the hard work of reflection and try to think more carefully and deeply, perhaps, about our faith and our beliefs, and just help us to have courage as we do this, that there might be some beliefs that we've held on to for not good reasons, and I pray that you just lead us to truth in those cases and help us to have the courage to go there in our beliefs. And so help us as we think and as we talk, and just pray that all this effort for these guys, as these men and women, as they pursue their seminary degrees, I pray that it would be not just for a slip of paper, not just for a job of some sort or other, staff position, but ultimately to know you in a deeper and fuller way. Pray that that would be all of our pursuits. So we love you and we thank you, and just pray that you pray for a good class now. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so as I recall, we had a couple slides left to do here on the postmodernism issue. And the basic claim that I want to say, and just to sort of refresh our memories, is that there's some things that we do need to be listening to, I think, with post sort of the postmodern trends. Again, I think I told you I wanted to do my dissertation. My PhD, critiquing postmodernism. I'm not a fan. I'm not a proponent. I'm a critic. But I do think there's some things for us to learn, and that would be sort of the kind of modesty of it. To say maybe our claims of certainty and our claims of those sorts of things about our pursuit of these things. Maybe that was right. Maybe we should just be careful how we say these things and just, but the flip side of that, I want to say here, I think this is where we stopped. I do think we have what I've referred to as mathematical certainty about such things like the laws of logic. Right, did we talk about the? I think we might have had this up. Where we got to. Um, in any case, um, right, and I think we can actually have knowledge with certainty about things like the laws of logic, mathematical truths, and some things like that. But what that does is gives us, in a way, a kind of way to be rational. If that makes sense. So that when we do sort of experience facts of the world, and we begin to make inferences and and make form arguments we're going to make use of that knowledge of arguments. So we did, I guess it's been 2 weeks now. The week that everybody loved, right? The week on logic. Everybody's favorite. Okay. We learned these principles of how to make good inferences and things. And so if we then sort of look around at the world and see these facts, then and maybe again that certain facts are not known with certainty, but we can have good reason for believing. I think that's enough. If you remember the week before that even right, where we talked about epistemology, I think so long as you have justification, if you have good evidence for something, and that thing is true, then I think you have knowledge in that case. And so I think we can have knowledge of Christianity, but I just think it's going to be the kind of thing that's doubtable, right? But that's okay. That's not a bad thing. That doesn't make it any less true. Right? It's just the thing that where we are on a journey to sort of know these things and so on. And I think that's a good lesson for us all to learn. But it's certainly not to go to the overcorrection to say right, that truth itself is perspectival. That seems to be the radical overcorrection to what I've characterized as the kind of optimism of the Enlightenment and so on. Right? We can discern evidence and be pointed to the truth and believe rationally. And that's kind of all we need. I think that's just where we're at in pursuing, a rational faith and so on. Here's where we give a kind of unique Christian critique of postmodernism. Right here's where this is where I feel like it's a kind of oxymoron to have Christianity and postmodernism sort of together. Right? Because what Christianity is, I mean, it's so anachronistic to read postmodernism postmodernism back into the words of Jesus, for example. In other words, when Jesus said, "The truth shall set you free," I don't think he meant the truth as had perspectively in a community of, similarly linguistic folks, right? I'm pretty sure he just means the reality, the truth of the Christian gospel will set you free. And so on. So I think in a lot of ways, by going towards that postmodern route, rather than just being a bit more modest in our claims, right? Which I think, again, is just a intellectual virtue. We cut the legs out of Christianity, cut the legs out of the gospel, cut the legs out of mission. Because, I mean, what else are we doing in missions other than going to people that speak differently? Right? That think differently. Attempting to put the gospel express the gospel in their context and and say that this is absolute truth that they should give their lives to. Right? And again, that's our tradition. So I think when we go to when we say I'm a postmodern Christian, I think you're just sort of putting again, unless you mean you're putting some thrifts or couches together and doing something, you know, different in your services. I'm fine with that. I think we could be creative in some ways. I mean, there's things to talk about, definitely. There's probably good things to do, not not so. But I think we're just talking about what works better, sort of functionally, and so on. But to say philosophically, I hold the postmodernism, and I'm a Christian. I think these are very something's going to give out, and I think it's Christianity. Yeah, so it's postmodernism this overcorrection. Also think postmodernism is self-refuting. And we can see this pretty easily, I think. Right? Because we want to ask this question. Just think of again, remember the story of the blind men that we started the religious pluralism discussion with. There's one person that's not blind, and that's the narrator. Well, here it looks like the only person that doesn't seemingly have perspectival truth is the postmodern person who's recommending for us all to be postmodern. It seems like what he or she is saying is the truth of postmodernism is not perspectival. The truth of the view itself is absolute. But if truth is perspectival by definition, then that's self-refuting. That's like claiming there's no absolute truth. That's like claiming I speak no English as I'm speaking English, right? There is no there is only perspectival truth. Was that perspectival? And that's always been the hard thing when when anybody tries to redefine truth in some way or another. it almost always, right? Because it almost always looks like, so what's the postmodern to do? Are they going to write a book defending and offering evidence for the absolute truth of postmodernism? I mean, they do that. They do write books, but it's sort of like if you're a postmodern, the most consistent thing for you to probably do is just be quiet. I mean, just stop writing, right? Stop sharing your views with people. Go be perspectival. Right now, again, I'm not trying to shut anybody down or anything like that, but it just seems that's the consistent mode when they move into writing books and telling us all to be postmodern. It surely looks like they're refuting their own view. It's no longer perspective. They want us to have that view too. Does that make sense to you? Okay. I think that's the nail in the coffin, to be honest with you. Postmodernism is that when it's a view about the truth, redefinition of the truth. Yes?
You say that we should not claim that for certain beliefs.
Yes.
Are you including like things like the Trinity, the Incarnation, resurrection?
It gets a little trickier there, but I think that I would, though I kind of take it back too, because I think we can know that in the basic sort of way, but for me, being what's called sometimes referred to as properly basic doesn't always have certainty. So and most people that want to make it properly basic don't need it. In other words, I think we can know the Trinity, personally, and be acquainted with the actual Trinity, and know that there's a Trinity and so on. Now, is that certainty? I don't know. Right? I think we still have we're forming a belief about sort of the way the world is, and is it possible for it to be false? It seems possible.
Well, I think it's a little bit more complicated. Let's just take the resurrection.
Yeah.
As a Christian, that's the heart of the gospel.
Absolutely.
Paul says without the resurrection, we're still dead in our sin.
Right.
I'm trying to grasp what
Yeah.
by not
Please.
that for certain.
Yeah.
As someone who proclaims the gospel.
Absolutely.
I have to certainly say that Christ resurrected, or we have no gospel.
Right. But remember, mathematical certainty was this very specific thing, and that is where it's not even possibly false. Like you can't even conceive of the possibility of its being false. So the law of non-contradiction is an example of that. You can't conceive of that being false. Right. And so is the claim that Jesus rose from the dead like that? And I think we, again, remember how I started, or this might have been a few weeks ago, so maybe it's a little distance from, to connect these up. But what I want to say is there's a sense of, I do have certainty about the resurrection of Jesus, absolutely. And I'm happy for you to proclaim that and say that you're certain about those things. But when we get really specific about what do we mean by certainty, what I mean is I've got my mind fully made up. I've literally given my life to its truth, and I proclaim it as truth that all people should believe, and so on. But can I conceive of the possibility of it being false? Yeah, that's not even hard. I mean, that's because any kind of historical claim can be conceivably false. And that's why I say I think even Paul does this in 1 Corinthians 15. And if anybody has given his life to something, it's Paul, to the gospel, I should say, is Paul. And yet in 1 Corinthians 15, the latter half, is what you're alluding to, that if he's considering the possibility and saying, if that were to be the case, then our faith is in vain. Right? But notice it doesn't, if you were to say, if there's a square circle, then, that doesn't even make sense to say, right? Because this is just something that couldn't possibly be the case. It's not logically possible, but the falsity of Christ's resurrection, I think, is conceivable, though it doesn't take away from its being true, of course, and it doesn't take away from our confidence that we could have in proclaiming its truth, and et cetera, et cetera. It's just this: when somebody denies it, is it literally logically absurd, barring all the evidence and all reasons we have for believing it? And I want to say no, that's not absurd for somebody to deny it in that sense. Because after all, people need a preacher. People need to hear. People need to have this testified to. They need to see Scripture and so on, among other things. Whereas, just sit there and think about a circle. Could it be a square? No. It'd be absurd to claim that in a logical sense, right? And of course, nobody does. But yeah.
Well, the part of this that comes down to it's not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Saying like it was 100%, we're mathematical certainty.
Right. Logically speaking.
Yeah. So when we look at it, we see all the evidence, and it's a very arbitrary number, but let's say we see it in 85% likely, which then the faith part in it is that extra 15%.
And all you're referring to there, so I don't want to set it up quite like that, because I don't want to think of faith. We talked about this. I don't want to think of faith as just that what sort of gets plugged into that gap. I just think of faith as a state of trust when we have reasons to believe. When we have reasons to believe, yeah. But also, this might get us off on a tangent. That's okay. I want to say that all we're talking about is the logical sort of likelihood. Can you be 100% confident that the resurrection's true? Yes. Is it 100% true? Yes. Is it possible to, just logically speaking, to deny it? Yes. And that's the only point. That takes away mathematical certainty, but it leaves fully in place all these other forms of what we might call certainty. When a philosopher talks about certainty, they mean typically mathematical certainty. Like not even conceivable. The square circle, right? Which is like not very practical. Again, don't use that if you're in an argument with your wife or something, or your spouse. I can tell you it doesn't go well. Yeah. You say, well, that's not even logical. Well, it's logically possible that. No, don't do that. Because typically when we talk about, is this possibly false, we mean like, is there good reasons to think it's false? Could it be that as we get into it, is it false, and so on and so forth? And that's where I say, as Christians, I think we're persuaded, we're confident, 100%. We sit here confident. I stand here confident, believing that there's no sort of smoking gun out there that'll show us that the resurrection didn't happen. I think all the evidence points to its truth, so much so that I've given my very life to it. And that's what I take Paul's sort of epistemic situation to be as well. In 1 Corinthians 15, as he's saying, I can consider that, I can logically conceive of this, and if that were to be the case, then our faith is in vain, and we're of all men to be pitied, and so on. But remember, too, the first part of 1 Corinthians 15, he's just given a list of eyewitnesses and put himself in that list. In fact, he said, here's the evidence that this is an absolute truth. But if this were not to have happened, our faith would be in vain. That's really important to understand what I mean by mathematical certainty. So I'm thankful for the question. I hope we talk more about faith, because I don't want to think of that as just what plugs in there. I think when we have something like an 85% likelihood, again, we're just talking about logic of it all, then we place our faith in that thing, right? So I don't think, I actually gave a talk last night to a church. Actually, it was a Baptist association. It was really fun. It was apologetics as pre-evangelism. And I made the claim there that you won't find anywhere in Scripture, all of Scripture, where there's any kind of blind faith. What you'll see is it's always the more rational thing to trust God. Right? So that Peter is a good example of this, where he gets out of a perfectly good boat and walks on water, right? And you think, that was crazy irrational. Well, no, I mean, he knew who Jesus was. He knew what Jesus was capable of, in fact. And so it was actually a very rational, it's crazy, but it was rational, it was bold. It's Peter, right? But it was reasonable, it was rational. Then when he starts looking around at the waves and thinking, no way I should be doing this right now, and he begins to sink, he begins to doubt, that was the irrational thing to do. I think faith is always rational. I think my faith in my wife is a very rational thing. Why? Because she's proven herself time and time again, right? And so I think that's how I think of faith. It's nothing epistemic that way, where it sort of like plugs into the gap that we have of our evidence and certainty or something. I think of faith as, so think of it, I know there's going to be much more that we need to say about this probably, and I won't right now, but I don't think faith should be in an epistemological category. I don't think it's an epistemic virtue. It's a moral virtue. It's what we do in light of the evidence. And when somebody, take like a spouse, where a person, the spouse has done, let's just say, his duty, he's been faithful and so on, but let's say the wife is suspicious, doesn't open herself up, right? It's a moral problem there. It's not an epistemological problem. She should, notice the should, the moral ought, place her faith in her husband in that case. Anyway, okay, that's why I say that. We could go way off track here with that one, but hopefully that discussion will sort of keep coming up for us, and we can try to help clarify faith. I do have a blog post on this, where the title is "Faith is Not an Epistemology." So if you want to Google search that would come up for you, hopefully. Somewhere on down the ranking. Okay, what can we learn from postmodernism? Again, I think I've already said this. I think to be modest in our claims and so on, but not that radical overcorrection of thinking that truth is thereby perspectival. Okay. Everybody good? We need to get on to problem of evil. Let's see. End slideshow. Should I stop the video or just keep on going? Okay. All right. Um, from good. All right. I don't know if the color really works with the theme, right? It should be like a little more intimidating and ominous and so on. But anyway, the problem of evil. Okay. So one of the things that we want to, yeah, it's very calming in the face of evil. When an atheist, so here's a question. Can an atheist argue for, mount evidence for atheism? Right? It's rather difficult to say that, right, here's my argument for the fact that there's no God whatsoever. And a lot of atheists will say this. They should be agnostics or, right, they shouldn't be atheists in some ways because of what they say. But they'll say things like, look, I can't rule out a God that created and then has sort of stepped back, a kind of deistic God that got things started and then is not involved anymore. Or that there's some God somewhere, but we don't know anything about him or her or it, or something to that effect. So, again, most of them will admit to this, that you can't, and part of it is the logic of saying that there is no X. It's very difficult to rule out in all senses of the X that thing exists. It's sometimes called a universal negative. And people will say you can't prove a universal negative. But what they can do, and what atheists, especially the more thoughtful ones, will do, is present arguments, right? The less thoughtful ones will just dismiss it as crazy. You know, you might as well believe fairy tales. Or whatever. But the guys that I interact with sometimes that are thoughtful, at least mount arguments, and a lot of times it's going to be the argument from evil. Right? But what that person is doing is saying that a certain conception of God doesn't exist. Um, right, right, but they're not going to be able to rule out the God that started it all off and then has checked out. They're also not going to be able to rule out the God that's the genie God that grants unlimited. You know, this or that. It's very hard to mount evidence against that. However, uh, um, what people will do is they'll argue from the existence of evil to say that a God of a certain sort can't exist, or likely doesn't exist, depending on what form the problem of evil is raised. Okay, so what sort of God are they ruling out by evil? Now, I'm not saying that this is gets us out of having to answer this at all. Right? Because I'm guessing most of you guys don't believe in Zeus and right? You believe in a God for which evil is a problem. But the point is just to sort of like get us focused on the fact that really, what's the problem of the problem of evil? And it's a problem for those that believe in God of a certain sort, which is going to be probably everybody in the room, I'm guessing. Evil is a problem for God